Teams get elite talent from everywhere. If you watched my last video, you would know that they can come from the draft or international signing. They can also come from unorthodox ways, such as the Rule 5 draft or signing as an undrafted free agent. But perhaps the most glamorous and attractive that has teams watering at the mouth every offseason is through one way: free agency. You know how this goes. Every year, a few big names hit the open market after their contracts expire. Last year, it was Juan Soto. The year before, Shohei Ohtani. And in 2022-23, 4 World Series winning shortstops all hit free agency at the same time. Now, this year's class might not be quite as star-studded, but there's still plenty of intrigue. Players like Kyle Tucker, Kyle Schwarber, Dylan Cease, and JT Realmuto are all available this offseason. Tucker is the clear headliner, likely looking at $350 million or more, but don't be surprised if a few others land close to $300 million themselves. Free agency presents both risks and rewards for teams. If all goes well, free agent signings can prove to be well worth it, especially when that player lives up to his lofty contract and expectation. When it works, it's magic, but when it doesn't, you get the nightmare scenario, paying $30 to $40 million a year to a player who's not performing while your team misses the playoffs. Trust me, I know that pain. I am an Angels fan. Nonetheless, free agency is a gamble in itself. Teams pay veteran players in their prime top dollar, and it can be worth every penny, or it could become a case where teams figuratively burn money. People around baseball and fans know in hindsight if a free agent signing was worth it in the end. In the moment, it's hard to look at it objectively. Let's say you're a fan of a team that had a decent, but not great season and missed the playoffs by just a few games. Then your team goes out and gets the top available hitter on the open market on a 10-year, $350 million contract. Would your first reaction be, well, let's see how this pans out in a few years? Of course not. You feel a sense of euphoria that your team's management had the nuts to go out and acquire premium talent to help the club. This is exactly my point. Teams fantasize in free agency about a player and happily hand out exuberant contracts based on what they did so far in their career and what they're projected to do going forward. While there isn't a quote-unquote formula per se, a player's value to the team can only be assessed after several years. If the team wins the World Series and that player was a significant part of that accomplishment, it's an obvious success. However, if a team stagnates or declines with the player, it's seen as a failure. So what I decided to do is create a formula. While it's not perfect, it serves as a reasonable numerical statistic to show how valuable a player is to their team in the context of their contract. In the next several videos, I'll be assessing every team's biggest free agent contract from the past 10 or so years, and it will be split into 3 parts. This video will cover American League teams that did not make the postseason in 2025. The next will be National League teams that did not make it, and the final will be the remainder of the teams that played in the postseason this year. I'm doing it this way because if I did all 30 teams now, the video would be ridiculously long, and as you'll see in the formula, it's a little complex. Additionally, team results at the end of the year play a huge part in the way I constructed the formula. But enough with the stalling. Let's get into the formula. The player value equation is shown here. The 2 main components are the weighted sum, which captures the player level performance and efficiency profile, and the team coefficient, which adjusts the player's individual score for team context and playoff impact. As you can imagine, the player's score will take a significant hit if their team misses the playoffs each year, regardless of whether the player was an MVP caliber talent or not. You see the 9 divided by 3.5 constant multiplied by the 2 values. The reasoning for this is to adjust the value so it makes sense on a 1 to 5 scale, and this value gives a fair reasonable multiplier to that. If we didn't do this, results would cluster around the 1.5 to 2.5 range, which would make it much more difficult to assess a player's value to the team in the context of their contract. I'll show the scale here, and each range's interpretation. A player with a score between 1.0 and 1.5 would be considered a bust, while a player who had provided elite production would fall somewhere in the 4.0 to 5.0 range. Let's get to the weighted sum, which has 4 components: age at the time of the signing, the total dollar amount of the deal, length of the contract, and cumulative wins above replacement or cumulative WAR. Each has a weight attached to it, with the WAR component being the most weighted at 0.5. Length rewards contract tenure, rewards stability and commitment, while penalizing ultra-short deals that don't impact team building. It also penalizes long-term deals that bring minimal value. Age rewards players signed in or entering their prime years. It reflects long-term viability. Younger signings are generally more efficient, and older signings risk decline. The peak age for a player is typically around 28, and the equation takes the absolute value to have it decline symmetrically on both sides. This is to make sure that a player signed at 25 isn't looked at in the same way as a player signed at 31. Value measures production per dollar spent. High WAR with a low salary yields a higher score. It measures WAR per dollar of salary. So it's much better for a player to accumulate 5 WAR in 2 seasons versus the same amount in 4 seasons. The alpha and beta are here to stabilize the number, and combining to favor high WAR per dollar and penalize overspending. Lastly, the most important component, WAR, captures on-field performance through wins above replacement. Pretty simple. The more WAR, the better. Now let's move to the team coefficient side of it. Baseball is a team sport, and at the end of the day, players should really be measured on their impact to the team's success or lack thereof. This reflects how the team performed during the player's contract period, emphasizing postseason success. The coefficient itself is the average of the team's finishes during each season of the player's tenure. The respective values for team finishes are shown here. So the deeper playoff runs a team has, the better the value. Consecutive seasons of no playoffs seriously impacts a player's overall value. Higher coefficients mean the player was a part of or contributed to a winning environment, amplifying their contract's overall success. And when you take the average, you get the team coefficient. So when we put the two together, we get the following. I know it's a lot, so feel free to pause the video to get a better understanding of what will be calculated. But without further ado, let's get into the American League teams and their biggest contracts over the last 10 years or so that missed the playoffs this season. Starting with... I know it's hard to believe, but at one point in time, the Athletics did spend in free agency. When the A's signed Yoenis Cespedes to a 4-year, $36 million deal out of Cuba, it was a bold and forward-thinking move for a franchise known for bargain efficiency, rather than splashy contracts. The player value model affirms that it paid off handsomely. With a weighted sum of .535 and a team coefficient of 1.63, Cespedes' contract computes to an outstanding 3.25 out of 5, a strong return on investment that reflects both excellent cost efficiency and sustained team success. This efficiency metric leads the components, emphasizing that Oakland extracted tremendous value per dollar spent, while his WAR component and a consistent age profile round out a high-performing balanced signing. On the field, Cespedes brought an electrifying mix of power, athleticism, and flair that instantly energized the A's and their fan base. His bat lengthened a lineup that had long lacked middle-of-the-order punch, while his arm and defense in left field were among the league's best. In his first 2 seasons, he played a key role in back-to-back division titles and multiple postseason runs, validating the front office's calculated gamble on international talent. And even after being traded mid-contract to the Red Sox in 2014, his presence had already elevated the franchise's offensive ceiling and contributed to one of the A's most competitive stretches in the 2010s. From a value standpoint, Cespedes' 3.25 out of 5 score positions his deal as one of the best mid-market signings of the 2010s. It perfectly embodied Oakland's philosophy, identified undervalued skills, pay below market, and extract maximum on-field return. While his tenure was relatively short, the impact was unmistakable. A cost-effective, high-energy star whose signing helped reshape how small-market teams approach international free agency. When the Orioles signed Alex Cobb to a 4-year, $57 million contract just before the 2018 season, it marked one of the few long-term investments made by the franchise during a transitional era. Unfortunately, the results were underwhelming across the board. With a weighted sum of .273 and a team coefficient of 0.7, Cobb's overall value computes to a 1.49 out of 5. Placing him solidly in the poor return category. His WAR component reflects multiple injury-plagued and ineffective seasons, while the modest contract efficiency highlights that even at a mid-tier salary, Baltimore saw little production relative to cost. Cobb's tenure in Baltimore was marred by injuries and inconsistency. He struggled with command and health, posting negative WAR totals and never regaining the form that once made him a reliable starter in Tampa Bay. Deep in a rebuild, the Orioles offered him little run support or defensive health, but the lack of durability and production made his contract one of the least impactful free agent deals of that period. And despite flashes of competence late in the stint, his cumulative contribution fell well below expectations for a veteran signed to stabilize a young rotation. His lackluster output led him to being dealt to Anaheim in the last year of his deal, a season in which the Orioles lost a preposterous 110 games. From an organizational standpoint, Cobb's 1.49 out of 5 rating underscores the dangers of mid-rebuild spending, paying for experience that doesn't materially shift the team's competitive outlook. The Orioles absorbed the cost without gaining performance, leadership dividends, or trade value. While Cobb later revived his career with the Giants, his Baltimore years represent a sunk cost chapter for both sides, a well-intentioned signing that delivered neither wins nor long-term benefit. In 2023, the Chicago White Sox decided to hand out the largest free agent deal in its franchise history to 28-year-old outfielder Andrew Benintendi, a 5-year, $75 million contract. It was intended to signal a stabilizing addition to a talented but underachieving roster. Instead, both the player and the team have struggled to find traction. With a weighted sum of .285 and a team coefficient of 0.7, Benintendi's total value computes to a 1.51 out of 5, placing him in the well below average return range. The model reflects modest contributions across all factors. Age signing is a positive, but his efficiency and WAR rate show underperformance relative to salary and expectations. Benintendi's first season on the south side have been underwhelming, both at the plate and in the field. Known for his contact skills and defensive reliability, he struggled to hit for power or drive in runs, producing well below league average offensive metrics. While he remains a steady presence in the lineup, the lack of impact in key categories has made his contract feel expensive for the output. Compounding that, the White Sox have failed to contend during his tenure, and the team coefficient of 0.7 reflects a franchise stuck in perpetual underperformance. Not to mention, Benintendi played in 135 games during the infamous 2024 campaign, which saw the Sox post the worst record in modern MLB history.
Oh my goodness, the White Sox have just gone full White Sox.
At 1.51 out of 5, Benintendi's deal currently stands as a disappointing investment. Not disastrous, but far from delivering franchise-changing results. The signing was meant to add professionalism and consistency, but instead it has highlighted the organization's broader stagnation. Unless he rediscovers his Kansas City or early Boston form, the contract risks becoming another cautionary tale of a mid-market team overpaying for stability without upside. Michael Brantley's time with the Houston Astros perfectly illustrates a high-value, low-risk free agent signing. Joining the club in 2019 on a modest 2-year, $32 million deal, Brantley quickly established himself as one of Houston's most consistent and professional hitters, producing back-to-back All-Star caliber seasons in 2019 and 2020. The Astros re-signed him to another 2-year contract in 2021, and he continued to deliver dependable production at the plate. With a score of 3.83 out of 5, Brantley offered exceptional return on investment, a reflection of both his steady output and the team's sustained dominance. His weighted sum of .407 highlights balanced contributions across efficiency and WAR, while the team coefficient of 2.7, bolstered by multiple deep postseason runs and a World Series title in 2022, captures his influence during Houston's golden era. And although Brantley's 2022 season was cut short by a torn labrum during Houston's championship campaign, his steady performance leading up to that point played a significant role in the team's success. Brantley's impact extended well beyond numbers. His calm, disciplined approach and veteran presence made him an anchor in one of baseball's most talented lineups. Known for quality at-bats and exceptional contact skills, Brantley provided a stabilizing force amid the Astros' mix of young stars and veterans. Even as injuries began to limit his availability in later seasons, he remained a model of efficiency and reliability, often coming through in high-leverage postseason situations where experience mattered most. At 3.83 out of 5, Brantley's contract stands as one of the most efficient and impactful mid-tier free agent signings of the era. For a moderate financial commitment, the Astros received years of all-star level play and invaluable leadership in the clubhouse. His signing serves as a case study in how thoughtful roster building, prioritizing consistency, experience, and fit, can be just as important as splashy superstar deals in sustaining a championship caliber team. The Royals' signing of Seth Lugo was viewed as a modest gamble on a veteran right-hander with versatility and poise, and it's paid off better than most expected. With a weighted sum of .494 and a team coefficient of 1.25, Lugo's value score comes out to 2.59 out of 5, signaling a solid, above-average return for a mid-tier free agent deal. His performance has reflected consistency and leadership, giving Kansas City both innings and dependability in a rotation that desperately needed stability. Lugo's components tell the story of that reliability. His efficient and WAR figures stand out, showing he's been more than just a placeholder arm. He's truly established himself as Kansas City's frontline ace, pitching with the consistency and anchoring the Royals' young rotation while providing a veteran example of the team's developing arms. The team coefficient also reflects an improved club trajectory, with Kansas City's ALDS appearance in 2024 adding extra value to Lugo's contribution. At 2.59 out of 5, Lugo's deal looks like one of the smarter short-term signings of the 2020s, an instance where a mid-level contract yielded strong on-field value without the burden of a long-term financial risk. His combination of reliability, poise, and quiet competitiveness have helped stabilize the Royals staff, turning what was once a speculative signing into a meaningful boost for a rebuilding club. Anthony Rendon's time with the Los Angeles Angels has reflected one of the most disappointing big-money free agent signings of the modern era. After inking a massive 7-year, $245 million contract following his stellar World Series winning season in Washington, Rendon was expected to serve as the offensive and defensive anchor alongside Mike Trout and Shohei Ohtani. Instead, frequent injuries and inconsistent play have defined his Angels' tenure. The weighted sum of .312 shows modest contributions relative to the contract's size, while the team coefficient of .7 underscores the Angels' continued struggles to reach the postseason during his stint. His score of 1.56 out of 5 reflects a stark gap between expectation and production. While Rendon's first season with the club featured flashes of his trademark plate discipline and defensive skill at third base, those moments soon faded. Extended stints on the injured list and a steady decline in power output eroded much of his impact. As a result, the Angels have yet to see meaningful returns from their investment, and Rendon's availability, rather than his ability, has become the defining storyline of his tenure in Anaheim. At 1.56 out of 5, Rendon's deal stands as a cautionary tale about the risks of long-term high-dollar contracts for players on the wrong side of 30. What was intended to be a cornerstone signing has instead limited roster flexibility and hindered the Angels' ability to build around Trout and their young roster. With only 1 year left on this deal, this contract will frankly go down as one of the worst and least efficient free agent investments in league history. Carlos Correa's time in Minnesota was always going to be a gamble. A superstar shortstop with postseason pedigree and elite defense, joining a mid-market contender hoping to level up. It sounded great on paper. Correa arrived in 2022 on a 3-year, $105 million deal. His first season was fine, solid numbers, but nothing spectacular, and he opted out of that first year. Then what followed is one of the most bizarre free agent stories we've ever seen. First, Correa agreed to a $350 million deal with the San Francisco Giants, only for that deal to collapse after he failed his physical. Within literal hours, the New York Mets swooped in with a 12-year, $315 million offer, and that deal fell apart too, for the exact same reason. In the end, Correa circled back to Minnesota, signing a 6-year, $200 million contract. That press conference must have been awkward as all hell. Looking at the numbers, Correa scores a 2.14 out of 5 in the formula, a reflection of his uneven tenure. His weighted sum of .454 indicates steady but unspectacular production, while the team coefficient of .98 shows limited collective success outside of one playoff run in 2023. Correa gave the Twins value, just not the kind that justifies franchise player money. And his on-field profile backs that up. Defensively, he was excellent as always. Offensively, he flashed his talent but couldn't sustain it thanks to reoccurring injury issues that kept him off the field for stretches at a time. His leadership matters, but the gap between salary and performance drags down his efficiency score. So when Minnesota decided to move him at the deadline in the middle of his contract, it wasn't just about clearing payroll, it was about unlocking flexibility that the deal had tied them up to. From a value standpoint, Correa's Twins era ends as a moderate return on a major investment. He brought legitimacy and helped end a postseason drought, but the long-term payoff never matched the price tag. Charlie Morton's signing with the Tampa Bay Rays on a 2-year, $30 million deal remains one of the best examples of a short-term free agent deal yielding exceptional value. With a score of 3.14 out of 5, Morton's impact far exceeded the expectations for a 35-year-old veteran joining a small market team. His weighted sum of .362 and an impressive team coefficient of 2.3 demonstrate how Morton's individual performance intertwined seamlessly with Tampa Bay's organizational efficiency, helping propel the team to both a Division Series and a World Series appearance during his 2-year tenure. Morton's on-field results, highlighted by a third-place finish in 2019 AL Cy Young voting and consistent postseason dominance, gave the Rays a legitimate ace to pair with their innovative pitching strategy. His composure, durability, and leadership elevated a young staff that included emerging talents like Tyler Glasnow and Blake Snell. Though the formula's WAR component tempers the final score slightly due to limited contract length, the value-to-cost ratio was among the league's best during that window. At 3.14 out of 5, Morton's contract stands as a quintessential Rays move: short, efficient, and highly productive. He delivered top-tier performance at a fraction of the cost of similar caliber arms elsewhere, and his veteran presence left a lasting imprint on the franchise. From both the financial and competitive standpoint, this deal epitomizes how Tampa Bay maximizes marginal value in free agency. Corey Seager's arrival in Texas in 2022 came with a massive Texas-sized 10-year, $325 million contract, symbolizing the Rangers' commitment to transitioning from a rebuilding club to a true contender. His signing immediately elevated the franchise's competitive outlook, and the results have truly validated that investment. With a score of 3.32 out of 5, Seager's deal has delivered exceptional value for such a large-term financial commitment, which is a rarity among long-term mega deals in recent MLB history. His weighted sum of .645 highlights his balance of WAR production, consistency, and efficiency, while the team coefficient of 1.4 mirrors Texas's ascent to championship status during his tenure. When healthy, Seager has performed at an MVP caliber level, serving as the offensive anchor for a lineup that powered the Rangers to their first World Series title in 2023, where he won the World Series MVP. Advanced metrics show elite productivity and a strong return on investment, proving that he's been every bit of the franchise cornerstone that Texas envisioned. Beyond the numbers, Seager's leadership, comp presence, and postseason performance have reinforced his reputation as one of the league's most complete shortstops. While early injuries slightly muted his cumulative output, his impact per game remains exceptional. At 3.32 out of 5, Seager's contract stands out as one of the few superstar deals that has truly lived up to its billing. His combination of elite hitting, defensive steadiness, and championship composure has reshaped the identity and expectations of the Texas Rangers. Should he maintain this level of performance for the next few years, his deal could be remembered not only as a cornerstone of Texas's title run, but as one of the most successful free agent signings of the modern era. Alright, that's the end of the video. If you made it this far, I really appreciate it. As I mentioned earlier in the video, there's going to be 2 other parts to this project that I'm doing. Right here is the National League version of teams that didn't make the playoffs, and then right here is the remainder of teams that were in the playoffs for this season. So once they're up, you'll be able to see them both right here. These took a lot of time, so I really hope that you guys enjoy these. Other than that, I hope you have a great day, and I'll see you soon.